Welcome to a special version of the Dynasty Pros show. Tonight, we're going to take a look at a 12-team IDP and Devy startup draft we completed recently. I'm Justin Taylor and joined by my fellow members of the Dynasty Pros team, Bob Miller, Tommy Harvey, and Joe Goodwin. Welcome, fellas. This should be a good time.
Absolutely. Should be a good, crazy draft, but it was super, super fun.
Can we just say that's like the best intro in fantasy football podcast right now? Seriously.
So?
That's a great video.
So? It is.
Pretty fantastic. So to get things started here, I'm going to go through just a few of the details for everyone so you know a little bit about the scoring and kind of how we did this thing. It's a super flex league, 6 points per TD for quarterbacks, no tight end premium, so that's a good thing to remember. Full PPR, 0.5 points per first down. IDP scoring decently weighted towards the IDP players, 1 point per tackle, half for assist, 4 points for a sack, 3 points for a tackle for a loss, 5 points for interception, 3 for a forced fumble, 2 for a fumble recovery, 1 for passes defended. So it's a start 20 league, 10 on offense, 10 on defense with a 15-man bench and a 5-player taxi squad where we're doing first and second year players on the taxi squad. So good thing to remember is we did rookies and Devys in this draft altogether, and you got up to 4 Devy picks per team. So you were allowed to make trades and get an extra Devy if you traded away a Devy pick, but 4 was the max originally coming in. So we're going to go quickly through the early rounds of the selections, kind of talk about what we liked, didn't like, any regrets, that type of thing from each of the owners, kind of talk about our teams, and then also, some of the other picks that were made by some of the other owners. And at the end, we'll kind of throw bigger groups of rounds together because this was a 41-round draft, and obviously we go round by round. We're going to be in big trouble. It's going to be a 10-hour show, so we won't do that. So let's jump into it, guys. First and second rounds, we'll go through those little observations here. Quarterbacks flew off the board, 8 of the first 10 picks. QB with wide receiver Justin Jefferson going in with the 6th pick. Jamar Chase went with the 9th, and then we finished off the round with rookie, supposed to be 1-1, Bijan Robinson out of Texas going with the 11th pick, and then 49ers running back Christian McCaffrey finishing out the round at number 12. Also, a couple surprising for a few of us, a couple Devy picks went in the second round right away is USC quarterback Caleb Williams went to 2-2, and then I was really hoping to get a shot at Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State. He's one of my favorite players. Marvin Harrison Sr. Is my all-time favorite player. Didn't even get back to me in the second round as he went 2-4. So I thought that was pretty crazy. How about you guys?
Go ahead.
Joe, go ahead, jump in there.
Well, I mean, the quarterback run at the beginning of a super flex is almost like, kind of standard for the course. But they're also, which I don't think if you hit on, but we also had third round reversal. So for a lot of the people who are at the tail end of that second round, if you didn't grab a quarterback in that first round and then it flips back to that third again, you're going to be in really bad shape if you don't grab at least one quarterback. So, I know I might be a little bit of a homer in me, but I got my Jalen Hurts. I'm super excited about that. He's going to be the anchor to my team. And I follow that up in the second round with my boy, A.J. Brown, who actually was not drafted by my team. It was drafted by my good friend, Bob Miller, who then subsequently immediately messaged me and said, how much would you like to give me for him since I know you want him terribly? And he basically took as much as he possibly could for me because he absolutely knew that I wanted to pair Jalen Hurts with A.J. Brown. So thank you, Bob.
Well, absolutely. It's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you. I mean, that's what I was thinking the whole time there. Yeah. No, it was the first couple of rounds went honestly as I expected. I've been in a couple of Devy drafts, and same thing with Tommy as well. I expected a couple of these Devys to go early off the board, especially Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison. Those two guys seem to be almost in a league of their own as of right now, at least. So that one didn't bother. That didn't surprise me at all. I've seen them go in the second round in a couple of other drafts that I've done. So I don't know. But yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Tommy, jump in there. You took the first Devy guy off the board with Caleb Williams. What was your thinking there?
My thinking was I knew he was about to go anyways, so if I wanted him, I really needed to jump in there and grab him. I knew the guy two picks away from me was definitely going to take him, and he ended up taking Marvin Harrison Jr. So I knew if I wanted Caleb Williams, I had to go ahead and take him.
Yeah,
Bob, talk about the trades. You were wheeling and dealing that first round. You were all over the place. You were making trades all over. You were the guy kind of getting everything going for everybody. Kind of talk about some of those trades you made and why you made them.
Well, man, I'm always wheeling and dealing. I am just a trade junkie. There's no doubt about that. So, I ended up with the last pick in the draft. So, I had the 112 and 2-1 at the turn there. Tommy screwed me over because I was going to take Bijan there and he was falling at 112 and Tommy sniped me at 111 and grabbed him. So my backup plan was to take Christian McCaffrey. However, Jonathan Walker, who's a part of the league, part of the team with us, really, really wanted McCaffrey. So he and I kind of spoke and talked and we made a deal. And I believe I traded him the 112, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. I traded him the 112 to move back a few spots. I traded basically the 112 for the 2-3 and the 5-3. So I ate that up, to drop back a handful of position or a handful of spots. Then at the 2-3, I took CeeDee Lamb at 2-1, and at 2-3 I took AJ Brown, which then I contacted Goody there to see what he'd like to do. He had the 2-9. So I traded him AJ Brown and dropped back to the 2-9 a few more spots. I took that 2-3 and 5-3 that I had just acquired and I turned it into I added a 10th and a 2024 second round pick, rookie / Devy. This league, your rookies or can be Devys that you select. But I dropped back to 2-9. I moved up from the 5-3 to the 4-4, moved up a little bit in the 10th round, and I got a 24 first. So basically dropped back a little bit more in the second round. I moved up a full round from the 5th to the 4th and traded a second for a first next year. I then took Tyreek Hill at the 209. I was pretty happy about that. So to kind of sum it all up, after making those few deals, I traded the 112 and a 2024 second for 2-9, a 4th, and a 24 first. So with the production that Tyreek Hill puts up there, I know he's not as young as AJ Brown, and I really didn't want to trade AJ Brown, but in this situation, I like my return to get another first rounder next year and just to drop back and get a highly productive wide receiver with Tyreek. I did it all day.
For the next couple of years anyways, right?
Exactly. For 2 more. Yeah, we'll see. Money talks, man.
Yeah, this is right where things started going south for me. Was the second round right here. I was not happy. I took Tua Tagovailoa. I did not want Tua here. I was looking at Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, and Saquon Barkley. I wanted one of those 3 guys. Of course, they went 3 picks right in a row. My backup of the 3 running backs was Tyreek Hill. He was my other guy. And then they all went to 4 picks right in front of me, and I kind of panicked. And I took Tua, and I'm not sure why, but I got really panicked. And with that third round reversal, I just looked at it and I was like, man, if I don't take another QB here, I could be in trouble by the time it gets back to me in the third round. So, like I said, there was a panic selection. There ended up not being any QBs that went in the third round before it got back to me. So I kind of upset at myself there. I thought it was going to go all QBs in the third round and I was going to be in trouble, and everyone avoided QB, and I probably could have got Tua a lot later. So that was my first one that I really was upset about because, I was really first wanted Jonathan Taylor, then Breece Hall, Barkley, and then Tyreek Hill, and ended up with Tua. So that was my first regret of many regrets in this draft. But hopefully Tua can stay healthy, and I won't regret it for too long. Let's jump now into third round. As Goody said, third round reversal. So third round and fourth round together. After I missed out, after I missed out on the running backs in the second round, I felt like I had to get somebody. And so I jumped in and took Najee Harris. Obviously, I'm a Steelers guy. Love Najee. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. So I jumped in and took him there. Seeing Caleb Williams and Bryce Young and all those guys, Caleb Williams went early, and then Bryce Young in the fourth round went the pick right in front of me. I kind of, again, this is where I panicked again a little bit at QB, and I jumped in and I took CJ Stroud at 4-3. Probably got a little ahead of myself with taking 3 quarterbacks in the first 4 picks, as I was by far the only person that did that. And maybe looking back at it, I maybe should have went with the double up and taken Stephon Diggs there to go with my Josh Allen pick in the first round for the combo. But yeah, I took CJ Stroud. He's a guy I like a ton, but maybe too early for me to go 3 QBs. But after I saw Bryce Young go, I knew there was no way CJ was getting back to me, so I jumped in and took him. Tommy, tell me about your third and fourth rounders here.
My third and fourth round, at that point, I decided that I wanted to go wide receiver. I thought that there were still plenty of options at quarterback and running back. So I went ahead and took Garrett Wilson, and then at 3-2, and then when it got back around to me at 4-11, I took Devontae Adams. I think Devontae Adams still has enough in him. And in the fourth round, I think that was pretty much a no-brainer.
Yeah, then Bob, how about you? You ended up stacking some guys that are a little bit older, but man, you got major production from your wide receivers here in the second through fourth round.
Well, yeah, I took Tyreek there in the second. I already had CeeDee Lamb, and I grabbed Tyreek. With that fourth pick in the fourth. Oh, well, I was actually happy because I had the first pick there at the third round reversal. So at 301, I took Austin Eckler. I just thought, the number one scoring running back in fantasy over the last 2 years, and I grabbed him in the third. Now, don't get me wrong, he's 27 years old. I get it. But in that offense, he's going to be highly productive. I mean, I'm the type of guy, like I try to keep a balance, but I've got to take the value. I'm not trying to, stack my team for 3 years from now. If there's an elite player, a high-end player, I'm not afraid to take him. I never will be. Never. I don't care about the age. It doesn't bother me very much. But and so leads me to, in the middle of the fourth with that extra fourth round pick I had traded for, I took Cooper Kupp. Taking Cooper Kupp, and then at the end of the fourth round, I took Mark Andrews. So yeah, I was extremely, extremely happy with that. So it's like I took that 12th pick in the first round, where I would have taken McCaffrey, and I turned it into Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp. Yeah,
you had a crazy strong start at wide receiver.
I did. I mean, I loved to wheel and deal, and don't get me wrong, I was actually quite ticked off. Cooper Kupp was my pick at 404, but who I wanted to take there was CJ Stroud. As a matter of fact, in the fourth round, I wanted to take Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Those were my first targets. So Bryce Young went at like 4-2, I believe, like you said. And then at 4-3, you took Stroud, and I was so beside myself. I was I just like, well, I've got a couple of stud receivers. I want to go grab some young quarterbacks. And obviously it didn't work out. The 2 quarterbacks I was targeting got sniped right before me. So I just went with the value there and took Cooper Kupp, and then went Mark Andrews a few picks later. So I was extremely happy with that. Starting off with Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, and Mark Andrews. Oh, and Austin Eckler. Those 5 in the first 4 rounds, I'll take all day.
Yeah, Goody, how about you? You made the trade for A.J. Brown, and what do you think about third, fourth round for you there?
So third round, I was ecstatic to get Travis Kelce. The position has just – there is so much uncertainty at tight end from week to week and team to team, and there are so few tight ends where it's – pretty much you put them in your lineup, and the only time you ever worry about them is when you look for their bye week. And Travis Kelce definitely checks the box off on that. So I almost look at Travis Kelce as really my wide receiver too, since I did have to make some trades and gave up my 4th round pick, which Bob turned into Cooper. I looked at it as in like A.J. Brown and Travis Kelce are my 1-2. And I'm pretty excited about starting them with Jalen Hurts because, in this day and age in fantasy football, a lot of people love to chase, and I'm with Bob 100%. You could set up your team with the most amount of talent that's going to be 3 years away, but you're going to always be chasing 3 years away. And one of the things, like I always, say to myself, when you got to push your chips all in to win, then that's what you got to do. So rather than taking a big high upside guy in the 3rd or 4th round, I'm taking Kelce all day, and I'm super excited to get all those stats because it just seems like the Chiefs really don't care what wide receivers they have. They continue to look at people and just scoff and go, no, we'll take a guy that the Giants think is just really junky, and we'll put him out there and we'll just do like 2 plays for him, and he's going to be awesome. So based off of that, Travis Kelce is pretty much almost as guaranteed to do what he normally does every single year. So super excited to add him to the team.
Yeah, I thought that was a great pick. He was definitely on my radar there in the 3rd round. I was looking at possibly the combo with Jalen Waddle and Tua, and then Waddle went at the 3-7, and then Travis Etienne went at 3-8, and then you grabbed Kelce at the 3-9. And once Kelce and Waddle went, that's when I was like, hey, at this point, I'm going to jump in and take Najee. But yeah, I thought those were both great picks, guys. I was kind of looking at. Now, as things got a little crazy here for Bob, as we got the 5th and 6th rounds, Bob was still without a QB going in this one. He ended up coming away with Arizona's Kyler Murray in the 5th round. Bob, you kind of talked about a little bit waiting so long to take QB. It wasn't necessarily your draft strategy, but with Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud kind of getting sniped on you, you kind of had to wait for Kyler. But I'll tell you what, waiting that long and Kyler being your number 1, you got to be happy with that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't let the value fall any longer. I did. I wanted to go a little younger at quarterback, and obviously with Kyler may not be ready to start the season from what the reports are, but you're talking a super flex league and Kyler Murray still sitting there in the 5th round. I sniped him up. I had zero doubt. I wasn't considering anything else there. I grabbed him right up. Like I said, we all obviously know who those 1st round quarterbacks are. And then everyone in the 2nd round that I was targeting was already gone. And the only people left over after that was people like Deshaun Watson. I'm not a Watson fan. And then when Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, obviously those were my targets, and then they were gone. So I just kind of waited. Kyler was sitting there. I just snagged him right up, man. It was a hell of a value there in the 5th round in a super flex. So I was super, super excited about that pickup.
Yeah, Tommy, jump in and talk about kind of your 5th, 6th round picks. The 5th, 6th round, we finally started seeing a few IDP guys come off the board. What were your strategy there then?
Yeah, with those IDPs started to go off the board in the 5th and 6th rounds, it led to some heavy hitters on offense to fall to later spots than what I kind of anticipated. So I went to T.J. Hawkinson at the end of the 5th round, and then in the 2nd pick of the 6th round, I took J.K. Dobbins. I still felt like there was enough value at quarterback that I could wait another round or two. So I actually didn't even end up picking my first quarterback in the 7th round.
Yeah, I was going to say, we felt like Bob waited a long time on Kyler Murray to take his first at 5-1, but you were actually the longest one to wait to take QB, as you didn't take a quarterback until the 7th, but then you went back to back, and we'll talk about those QBs here in just a second. Goody, give us your thoughts kind of on this 5th, 6th round.
Yeah, so I mean, going into the draft, I had a focus of coming away with one of the marquee quarterbacks that are in the draft. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and A. Rich, they all went in the fourth. And for me personally, I don't know if I was willing to pay that price at that point. But I was able to get Will Levis in the 5th round, and say what everybody wants. He doesn't make the touch throws. He doesn't do this, doesn't do that. You see the guy walking around throwing the football 80 yards. I'm willing to take that type of potential. Now it's all about where he goes. I'm a Philly guy. I don't ever hide the Philly stuff. If the potential for him to go to Indianapolis is there, it's coming from the Philadelphia tree. If he goes to Carolina, Philadelphia tree, with Frank Reich. And honestly, I would love to see Will Levis go to Carolina just because their quarterback coach is McCown. And being a Philadelphia guy, I'm going to tell you, I would tell anybody who would listen that the offensive coordinator for the Eagles at that point was McCown. Every time you looked at the sideline, because, when you get the home field view, he was always on the bench with the iPad, with that, Surface Pro. And he was always talking to Carson Wentz, always. And that year, Carson Wentz was going to be an MVP before he decided to pull the Superman against the Rams. That was McCown. And why did and that year, which a lot of people, he literally would go home Friday. He would coach his son's high school football team and literally fly back on Saturday. And then they would have a game on Sunday. The guy, the mental IQ he has. So whoever Carolina takes, they are going to absolutely be ecstatic with whatever quarterback they have because McCown is going to work his magic. I'm just hoping on hope there's a lot of smoke going on that it's Will Levis, and I'm going to be so excited with that pick.
Yeah, I'm not a Levis guy personally, but you make a good point there, and landing spot could be huge. I mean, if we've seen it with a lot of these rookie QBs, if they get with a good coaching staff and the right QB coach, it makes a huge difference. If they get with the wrong staff, these guys can get buried, even though they're super talented, get drafted super high. They go in the wrong situation, can absolutely kill them. So, like you're saying, Will Levis in a great situation might change things for me too. For me in the 5th and 6th round, I love Dallas Goedert. I took him in the 5th. Looking at what happened later in this draft with the kind of how late you were able to get some really solid tight ends, I'm kind of regretting taking him this early. I mean, I like him a ton, but seeing where all the other values went on tight end, I kind of felt like I maybe went a tad early. Once I saw Hawkinson come off the board, and then Kittle off the board, I kind of jumped on Goddard there. Once I took him, next 2 picks were Christian Watson and Michael Pittman. So Pittman was probably who I was looking at taking in the 6th round. But once he went and then I saw the rookie Christian Watson come off, I kind of jumped ahead of myself. I'm a big George Pickens guy. So I just love Pickens. I think he's got huge upside. I took him there in the 6th because I saw Watson. And I think I panicked a little bit. Like I said, I really wanted him, but I think I probably could have gotten him possibly a couple rounds later. But I didn't want to miss out on him. I knew I was going to be upset at myself if I didn't take him there. And so I jumped in and I took Pickens at 6'3", and for comparison, Jameson Williams went 6'5", and then Terry McLaurin went 6'8" in that same round. For all the IDP people, we'll let you know the first guy off the board was at 5'4", was Michael Parsons. So Michael Parsons was the first defender off the board. Second defender, same team came back and took Roquan Smith at the 6'9". So he took the first 2 IDP guys, and then coming at the end of that round, Bob jumped in and actually that was a traded pick, and Bob traded that pick, and Nick Bosa went to end out that 6th round. So then once those guys kind of hit, we knew the IDP fever was going to be on once the first couple guys came off the board. I was kind of trying to read it and seeing how long I could wait before I went and jumped in on the IDP. But that's kind of when everybody kind of started flying.
Yeah, I
Go ahead, Bob.
I had that pick right there at the end of the 6th round. And I'll be damned if Tommy didn't snipe me again. I was sitting there at 612, hoping that J.K. Dobbins was going to make it to me. But there it goes, the penalty of having one of your best friends in the league with you. They know exactly who you like and, what you're thinking and all that. So him taking Bijan a pick before me in the 1st, and then this one really stung too, taking J.K. right there in the 6th. So I was sitting there at 612. I really didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I wanted to go with. I didn't see a whole lot of value there, except for someone like JK, believe it or not. So there again, I ended up reaching out and making a deal to see who wanted the pick. And my guy, Walker, reached out to me again. I traded that 12th pick in the 6th round. I traded that and a 14th round pick to move back 4 spots at 703 and grab the 903. So I turned the 612 and 1412 into 703 and 903. And I thought that was a phenomenal deal for me. Walker, then I didn't know who he was going to take, but that's when he took Nick Bosa. I was like, that was someone I was looking at right there, but he took Bosa. And with Sleeper having dual eligibility, some of these defensive ends kind of their value just drops down a little bit because there are plenty of these linebackers that are dual eligible that you can grab to play on your defensive line. So I didn't really want to reach that high for a defensive end, even though Nick Bosa was sitting there. So I like the pickup. I dropped back a few spots and turned a 14th into a 9th, which I absolutely loved. And we'll get into, the 7th and 8th rounds here in a minute to where what I kind of did there. So.
Yeah, that's a good transition here in the 7th and 8th, where we started seeing more and more defensive guys coming off the board. We talked about dual eligibility. That's kind of where I jumped in there. I got TJ Watt at the end of that round at 7-10, and that's a spot where I really wanted Nick Bolton and then TJ Watt in my 7th and 8th round, but Bolton went 7-5. Once Max Crosby went right in front of him. And so once I saw those two guys go, I said I couldn't wait any longer on IDP. I knew it was time to jump in on that. And so I jumped in and I took TJ Watt at 7-10. That dual eligibility was big for me. The fact that he can be on my D line as opposed to having to be a linebacker, to me, just shot him way up my rankings. And I just thought I can't pass up a chance that I can play him on my D line most of the weeks. So I had to jump on TJ there. Again, really upset. You can see behind me, I'm a Mizzou guy. Really upset I didn't get Nick Bolton. I think he's just an absolute beast for the Chiefs. Wish I could have got him, but he went out. Now, outside of the IDP in these 2 rounds, because after I took TJ Watt, we saw Myles Garrett go, Hutchinson, and then Brian Burns all in that round as we started seeing guys fly off the board. Also, Lucan from Jacksonville also went that round. But this is also where we saw everybody kind of jump back in at QB. And Tommy, this is where you jumped in and took your first 2 QBs in the 7th and the 8th. I
did, yeah. 7-2, I went ahead and took Daniel Jones. I just thought that value was way too crazy to pass up there. He's going as a kind of a low end QB1 right now. So I thought 7th round was just ridiculous value. And then the 8th round, I came back at the end of the 8th and took Derek Carr. Him slinging the rock there in New Orleans is going to be pretty valuable to me. And let's not
JT, you're on mute.
Yeah, did he lose his volume? Yeah, he's on mute.
I think he muted himself. There he is.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
let's not kid ourselves. We also see your hat, so TJ Watt was a very good pick for you.
I appreciate it. I knew if I skipped him in that round and somebody else got him, I was just going to be kicking myself, to be honest with you. I was just going to be mad that I waited and trying to get the most value, so I went and grabbed him. and I'm glad I did. Glad I got him there. I really wish after seeing Nick Bolton go in that 7th, I kind of wish I would have jumped on Bolton in the 6th and taken him instead of Pickens. To tell you the truth, if I could go back and redo that, I would. But Bob, I was going to say, this is where you finally jumped in as well, and you got your second QB. You went in there and got Hendon Hooker. I mean, he's a guy all over the place. People, are talking about him going way late. Now, all of a sudden, there's a lot of buzz about him maybe being a first-round guy. He is a little bit older, 25, coming off the ACL injury. Tell me what made you want to jump in and grab a Hooker here in the 7th round.
Value. He's my number 3 quarterback in this draft, and it's not even close. I'm not an Anthony Richardson fan, and I'm not a Will Levis fan. I think I think Richardson's way too much of a project. And I think that Will Levis is Carson Wentz at best. So Hendon Hooker has been someone I've targeted everywhere I can get my hands on him. Even if he's already been drafted, I'm trying to make deals for him. Tommy and I literally, I live 15 minutes from the University of Tennessee campus. And so Tommy and I we've seen this guy play quite a bit. And, to put it bluntly, he would have been the Heisman Trophy winner this year had he not torn his ACL. He was putting up incredible stats. It wouldn't have been Bryce Young, would have been Caleb Williams, it wouldn't have been any of these guys. It would have been Hendon Hooker. He's an incredible quarterback. He's got the size, he has the speed, he has the arm, talent. Anthony Richardson is not a passer, he's a thrower. He's a project. Hendon Hooker is not that. He doesn't make very many mistakes, barely any at all. He can handle the offense, and he is one incredible quarterback. So grabbing him here after losing out on Stroud and Young, honestly, my targets, I wanted to take Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Hendon Hooker. I'm not going to lie. I wanted all 3 of those guys. So to grab Hendon Hooker here, and, in the first pick in the 7th round, after I traded, after I lost out on JK and then traded out of it and Nick Bosa went, the very next pick, I took Tony Pollard. I thought that was an incredible value there in the 7th round, taking him. I think everyone knew the writing was on the wall for Zeke. So, with him being gone, look at the hype Tony Pollard's getting right now. So grabbing him and Hendon Hooker within a couple of picks of each other in the 7th round I was super, super excited with that. So I liked that quite a bit. And then, a little later on in the 8th round, at the end of the 8th, I took my very first Devy when I took a wide receiver out of Texas, Xavier Worthy. Most likely a top 3 wide receiver in the upcoming draft. And I thought it was about time. I saw the value that was sitting there in the 8th and the 9th and the 10th rounds, what was coming up. And I just started thinking, why not take, it looks like a top tier wide receiver in next year's draft. I went ahead and knocked that out.
Well, to kind of piggyback off of Bob right here, taking Hooker, if people are so enthralled with Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, just wait until they see the arm talent and the physical just maturity of Joe Milton next season. He is going to get massive hype. Yeah,
absolutely. He might have one of the strongest arms I've ever seen.
That's ridiculous.
It's freakish. It's freakish. The guy probably throw it 100 yards.
Joe, tell me about you. You also got in on the Devy train here in this 7th round. Right before I took TJ Watt, you jumped in and got your Devy pick and got us kind of moving back in the Devy direction, where Bob then jumped on at the end of the round and took Worthy.
Yeah, so going into the draft, having to balance IDP with a normal lineup with your Devy selections. I had like little pockets of people that I was like, if I can get my hands on these guys, I'm going to do it. In Devy, it was, Caleb, Drake, and Marvin Harrison were the 3 guys that I was like hoping to get. I saw that value as early as it went. I said, nope. And like we'd said before, I'm not going to mortgage everything this year to maybe be good next year. And that's the risk you take with Devy. You're buying a stock. You hope that you're hitting on an Apple or you're hitting on an Amazon. But the reality of it is it could be Napster. Marvin Harrison is an exceptional talent. He goes out first week of the season, blows out his knee. He is no longer going to be what everybody expects him to be in the next year's draft. And the same goes for all of them. But I did go with, after those big three, it's the other wide receiver from Ohio State, Emeka Obeku. And I just fell in love with this guy. I'm actually little preview. Tommy wrote the Devy U article on USC. And as soon as I read that article, which I thought was awesome. So if anybody hasn't checked it out, definitely check that out. But I immediately was like, if you're going to talk about a Devy U, like as a school that's popping out a lot of NFL talent, it has to be Ohio State. So I had already started doing all my homework, all my research. And surprisingly enough, when they both got recruited to Ohio State, Marvin Harrison was only a 4-star product. He was not the number one wide receiver in that draft, but Emeka was. And there's a reason, because the long-term history of that dude, he can just do everything really well. So super, super excited to add him. He was really the only guy on my Devy list that I wanted to grab. So I took the chance and grabbed them there and figured there's plenty of other guys because, college football, there are so many players out there that elite group is so small. And I did put Emeka in that group for myself. So super excited to add him in there. And then, going through that, I also added Quentin Johnson because, again, I'm just trying to shore up the youth at wide receiver. There's a lot of weird tape on Quentin Johnson. You see some game tape and you're just like, dude, how is this guy not the number one pick? How is this guy not Calvin Johnson part 2? And then you see other tape where he literally looks like Nelson Aguilar and he's like dropping passes left and right. That's part of where we're at. We have so much analysis of these players now that we're going to see a lot more of the pictures from these guys. So I'm happy with Quentin right there. I think he's going to be a very serviceable wide receiver. Like I said, I'd already taken a few guys ahead of him, so I'm feeling pretty good about him. And again, situation's everything. So I'm hoping that he can be, on a team that's going to utilize his skills as best they can. And he's going to be one of my go-to guys for a long time at wide receiver.
Well, it's kind of crazy because the number one graded wide receiver in this draft class is probably going to be a 3rd-round pick. That's Cedric Tillman. He actually graded out the highest of any wide receiver after the pro days.
Yeah, Tillman went a whole lot later in this one. And this is kind of where we started seeing a few guys go. And this is where I've already talked about a few regrets in this draft. This was where I made the ultimate mistake on accident. So after I got TJ Watt in the 7th round, came back in the 8th. I was in the middle of doing a bunch of stuff. I got on my phone. I didn't think through it at all. And I took Christian Kirk. And as soon as I took him, I was like, what am I doing? As soon as I took him, I was like, oh, no, that's not who I wanted. I wanted Jordan Addison. So then when Gooding jumped in and took Quentin Johnson, I was like, oh, no, I just totally screwed myself because now someone's going to take Jordan Addison because Johnson went. And I was freaking out. And so I immediately got a hold of Bob, and I was like, I got to trade up. This next round. I got to get in somewhere because I can't believe I just screwed up and didn't take Jordan Addison. So I was so upset at myself. So I did able to make a trade as we transition in to the next couple rounds, the 9th and the 10th. So I was finally able to trade Bob, and I was able to get Addison 9-3. Luckily, I was still able to get him. I didn't know if he was going to last there. I was like I said, I was kicking myself hardcore. But then after I took him, and I realized who Bob took on the turn here, I was even more frustrated with myself. And Bob jumped in and took one of my all-time favorite Devy guys that I at this point, I had been waiting to take my second running back, and I couldn't believe that I blew it. And I didn't take Raheem Rocket Sanders from Arkansas. And Bob jumped in at 9-1 and took him, and I was like, no. I was like, not only did I not get Addison like when I should have, I could have taken Addison and then possibly get Sanders, and then I screwed it all up. So, Bob, tell me about you jumping in and getting there. I was furious with myself when I saw you got Sanders. And not only that, you jumped in and got Nicholas Singleton, running back from Penn State, as well as you murdered these rounds. I think these were your best rounds of the whole draft, and you had a great draft.
Yeah, you know me. I mean, I'm I'm always looking to make a deal. I am open for business. Dude, if somebody sends me a trade offer at like 4 a.m., I'm waking up and taking a look. That's just me. And so I'm always looking to, move around if there's players on the board there. So after taking Xavier Worthy there at the 8-12, I took, Raheem Rocket Sanders there at 9-1. And oh my gosh, it was about like I said, I was taking Worthy there at 8-12 because I didn't like the talent sitting around there at the time, with the available players. So it was time to go ahead and start snatching up some Devys. So when I took Sanders at 901, I was incredibly enthusiastic about that. And then just a few picks later at the 906, I took Nick Singleton. So what I did there really is I drafted my running back for 2024 and I drafted my running back for 2025. I mean, if all goes well, they don't blow a knee or something like that, I've got top tier running backs, coming aboard over the next couple of years. So I was really, really happy with that. And then in the 10th round, I took Keenan Allen at the 10:07. I thought that was just an incredible value. I do have a little bit older wide receivers, flirting 28, 29, 30 years old. But with the available talent there, with the players that were there in the 10th round, you're taking a wide receiver 1. And yes, Keenan Allen is a wide receiver 1. Okay. People can call him a wide receiver 2. Now, yeah, he's not got a whole lot of stock when it comes to dynasty leagues. But if you can grab a wide receiver 1 in the 10th round of any draft, you're doing something right. So he felt, he missed, several games last year. When he came back, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was the number 2 scoring wide receiver in fantasy football. From the minute he came back to was allowed to play to the end of the season, he was a top tier elite wide receiver. He's a PPR machine. And the fact that he reworked his contract and he's going to be in LA for at least another couple of years, I just thought that was a slam dunk grabbing him there. I really do feel, just as you do, I feel like I absolutely crushed the 9th and 10th, grabbing Xavier Worthy, Raheem Sanders, Nick Singleton, and then grabbing Keenan Allen. I was absolutely thrilled with those results.
Yeah,
Keenan Allen had a high end, like points per game. If you count in points per game, he was right up there when he actually played. He was fantastic. He was one of the tops of the league. And I was going to say, Tommy, give me kind of your thoughts on these rounds, kind of what kind of transpired all around here in the 9th and 10th.
Well, I thought Bob really did a good job of constructing his team here. He has a really good mixture of youth and experience, going with CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp, and then grabbing Eckler and Andrews and Murray. But then he also got those kind of high end Devy picks here in the in the 8th and 9th round, and then went with Keenan Allen, who is a very solid veteran as well. I was actually kind of surprised with Russell Wilson going there, especially with some of the talent that was still behind him. I had to go 9-2 with Dalvin Cook, with him still sitting there. I was very surprised he was still there. So I had to scoop him up there. And then in the 10th,
that was great value again. Getting Danny Cook that late was awesome value for you. I mean, I thought you did a great job there, and then you snuck DeAndre Hopkins in there as well.
Yeah, I was able to get Nuke towards back into the 10th round. I just with that type of veteran talent, being able to pair him with some of the younger guys I have is really going to allow me to kind of progress my team forward as the years go by, and not have and then not have to worry about a win now situation when I can just continue to try to be a contender.
Yeah, Joe, kind of give me your thoughts on these rounds, kind of what transpired all around.
Well, I mean, I had Tommy crushed with Dal Cook. It just blew my mind that he was still there in the 9th round. Again, going back to some of my sentiments, some people play for so long into the future, and it's just like, you pass on really, really good talent now. Dal Cook is a good example. The only other running back that I listed, and I'm going to pat myself on the back, I got Aaron Jones in the 14th round. 14th round. I mean, some of these highly productive running backs who maybe their window is a little smaller, but realistically, I mean, how many years have we been waiting for Derrick Henry's shoes to fall off and the dude just goes out and performs? There are just certain players that everybody just keeps, like Keenan Allen's another good example. Everybody just keeps waiting for the shoes to fall off and the guys to stop producing because they're getting older and everybody, the young guys are going to push them out. Everybody loves to draft the 3rd receiver from the Chargers because everyone just expects that guy is just going to inherit all of this amazing quality reps that Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are not going to do. And because they're going to either be injured, they can't play, whatever. And although there's these little bubbles, these little hiccups of a week or two where those guys might be okay, they don't sustain because at the end of the day, talent speaks over opportunity. Now, when those things collide, that's when you get the superstars, right? So the talent and the opportunity hit, and all of a sudden those guys just turn into something otherworldly. So for me, like I started to dip my toes in the IDP when I grabbed Devin White in the 9th round. Trying to get a guy that's going to get 150 tackles right off the bat is something that I prioritize. Because again, once I saw some of those guys going off the board, pay a little respect to those guys who are grabbing IDP really early. I had to jump in there, at least get like that rock solid guy. So I was able to grab Devin White. I was super excited about that. But again, there are some really good linebackers who are like on the cusp of being fantastic. When you look at some of those guys a little bit later, again, speaking on the praises of Bob, grabbing Frankie Louvu in the 12th round is just like an absolute monster in IDP. So when you talk about some of those linebackers that were going earlier, there was some amazing IDP value in these next couple rounds.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say is I really felt like this 11th to the 15th round in here, we started seeing crazy value. Guys, I was like looking at him like, wow. I was like, I can't believe that guy's still here. I'm mad I didn't get him. And going back to my George Pickens take in the 6th round, when I saw Deontay Johnson go in the 11th round, I really started questioning myself. I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, that's such value to get a guy like Deontay Johnson in the 11th round. It's just kind of crazy. For me then, and we'll talk about a few more of these absolute steals, I think, for people. But for me, this is where once I got jealous of Bob. Once he took all those Devy guys, I was like, what am I doing? I got to get my Devy game going. And Sanders, me and Tommy just did a Devy running back show last week, and Sanders is my number 1 running back going into next season for the draft. And I was so jealous that I didn't pick him. I was like, I've got to get it together. I got to get some Devy picks. And so that's where I jumped in and figured I better start taking guys before it's too late. And my first Devy, then I jumped in and took one of my all-time favorite players from my alma mater, Mizzou, wide receiver Luther Burden. Going to be a sophomore. They should see a QB upgrade this year, so I'm super pumped about him. Only a true sophomore coming into this season, but he's a guy I had to get before it's too late. And then I was super excited for how mad I was about missing out on Sanders. I came back. I got burned in the 12th round. Came back in the 13th round and got Penn State quarterback Drew Alar, and I was pumped about that because he right now is my top-rated QB in the 2025 draft eligible class. So I was super excited about that. A guy I maybe reached on in this was like in the 14th round, I took Sean Tucker out of Syracuse. He's seen his stock kind of drop with not going at the combine, missing his pro day, kind of a mysterious medical issue. He's kind of dropped in stock, but he's my RB3 right now, not knowing where he's going to get drafted and what's going to happen there. He was my RB3 coming into this class, so I felt like I wanted to jump on him and take him. I maybe could have waited a little bit, but I didn't want to miss out on him. And then we talked about it earlier, that dual eligibility on Sleeper now kind of changes things up. And Bosa was there, the other Bosa, and I was able to get him coming off an injury-riddled season. I got him in the 15th, and I felt like if he can bounce back, and now that he can play D-end, I thought that was great value for me in the 15th, being able to snag him up. Bob, kind of tell me about – you got a bunch of value in these rounds. Kind of tell me about where you were taking guys here in the 11th through the 15th round.
Well, you know, these were a few rounds where I kind of got sniped. There was a handful of players I was looking at that I really wanted. I really wanted Jalen Petrie. I wanted Kayvon Thibodeau. Looking at some of these players that were sitting around, but I grabbed players at this point that were going to help my team. So I felt, even though a couple of the IDPs were taken prior to me, I kind of got snatched up before me. I did walk away in these few rounds pretty satisfied. I was able to get my hands on Geno Smith, who is a top 10 quarterback, and the team has committed to him at least for the next 3 years, even though it could be just really a 1-year deal, depending on who they have. However, he was a top 5 quarterback last year. And so I don't see him really declining very much, if anything. So he's at least a top 10 guy this year. So, you know, grabbing him in the 11th round was an absolute steal for me. I grabbed David Montgomery in these rounds as well. And we all know the upside that could be there in Detroit now that Jamal Williams is no longer there. And just like what Goody touched on earlier, I started grabbing some IDPs at this point. I grabbed Frankie Louvu and Zaire Franklin, which both were stud linebackers and should continue to be stud linebackers. And another guy that really, Jalen Petrie was one of the guys that I got pissed off that got taken. But the one that really burned me up was Marcus Jones out of New England. In this league, we do count return yards, punt return yards, kick return yards, as any fantasy league should do. So we absolutely do that. And with this being an IDP league, there are a handful of defensive backs that are returners. So it gives them that extra value, that extra boost to where they can actually be usable. They can be playable. They can be flex worthy if you need be, especially you could start them at defensive back. Marcus Jones last year was an absolute cheat code. In the Dynasty Pros scoring system, he was the number 1 defensive back and, scoring defensive back with us. If you don't count return yards, then no, not so much. But he was their returner, kickoffs, punts. He was lining up at wide receiver. They were throwing him screens. He was getting interceptions and getting tackles. He was doing everything. He was an absolute cheat code, and he should be another cheat code this year. I was really, that was probably, the Bijan pick probably got me pretty good when Tommy got me there. Then Tommy followed it up by grabbing JK. That one kind of burned me up a little bit. Man, I was really kicking myself because I thought that I was going to be able to get my hands on Marcus Jones a little later on. but in this league, these people did a little bit of their research and they saw what he was. And honestly, he should have gone higher, but I was just hoping and hoping and hoping he was going to slip a little bit more. Let me grab my Geno Smith, man. David Montgomery's sitting right there. Let me grab my stud linebackers, and then I'll grab Marcus Jones and maybe a Jalen Petrie, and that didn't work out for me. So, kudos to the team that did grab Marcus Jones. They got one hell of a value there.
Yeah, Goody, tell me about your guys here. I thought your Jaquan Brisker pick in the 15th was great. He is the guy I had my eyes on. He was just a playmaker last year as a rookie for the Bears, and he's a guy I wanted. He was probably my top safety I was going to take just coming through, but you were able to get him in the 15th. And like you said, you got Aaron Jones in the 14th. I mean, unreal value there. And then you also scooped up Jordan Brooks, now injured. But, man, you got some good picks here in the 11th through the 15th.
Yeah, I was super stoked about Brisker. But like when we started doing this draft, the Bears went out with a free agency. They got a couple guys, a lot of linebackers who like to gobble up tackles. So this pick for me, even though I love Jaquan Brisker, did take a little step back after free agency. And I'm like, hopefully it all works out. But, the Bears invested a lot of free agent money to get in those two linebackers and TJ Edwards and Edmonds from Buffalo. So, but I think his upside is still there. And, with the Dynasty Pros scoring system, he does a lot of things for that defense. And as long as he continues to do those things, he's still going to be a point guy. Going just a little bit farther down, I was also pretty excited to grab my favorite Nakobe Dean, which I agonized over for like rounds because his name was just, once TJ Edwards was signed away by the Bears and everything else, people started to like really figure out like, well, who else is going to take those? Kazir White got signed away. So really the Eagles had no linebackers at all. Obviously, Nakobe Dean was going to move up, and the whole Eagles defensive line, they love to gobble up blockers. They need their linebackers to get tackles. So grabbing Nakobe Dean when I did, like how Bob talks about getting sniped, and, JT, you kind of talked about it too, about like, you wanted to move up to get Addison, and then you see that stuff. And I was like agonizing over Nakobe Dean going, do I do it this round? Do I do it this round? Like I kept going back and forth. And actually after I drafted him, I might've messaged a few people and just said, cause people in the chat are like, oh, it's a good pick. And I'm always like, well, like, what were you thinking? Cause I just was very curious as to people. And most of the feedback was he was on my short list now. So I had waited a few rounds, but I feel like pulling the trigger on him was pretty good. And then I was also, going back and forth with like the Devys too. When do I take my next Devy? That's the thing with these, C2C, these, campus to Canton leagues. You have to balance that youth with the older guys at the same time, because after getting a Mecca, I was like, when's my next guy? And that's always the big challenge in these leagues going in, like prioritizing, like Bob said it. He snacked up those running backs because he's like, I got my number one running back from 2024, my number one running back for 2025. So he sets them up really well for that long-term like rotation of players. So that's always really, really big. That's why I think I focused a lot on like younger players like Jordan Brooks. He's got a little bit of an injury thing, but I think he's expected to be back fairly early for the Seahawks. Maybe not at the beginning of the season, but probably by like October. So as long as he goes back and does it, now pairing him up with Bobby Wagner again, when all this free agency stuff happens, I'm all like, man, those two guys together are going to wreak havoc on the teams. So really, really excited about Jordan Brooks as well.
Yeah, you're kind of touching on that, like with the Devy running backs I took. Looking at my team and the way I was going there, I did take Austin Eckler. I took Tony Pollard. I took David Montgomery. And who knows how much time they have left. Austin Eckler, obviously, with his situation where he was asking for a trade, but now it looks like He's going to play out this final year of his contract. Tony Pollard, if Dallas doesn't go running back in this draft, if they don't end up with like a Charbonnet or something like that, Tony Pollard, I mean, the sky is absolutely the limit there. However, 1-year deal. So the way I kind of stacked it up is some of these, I've got these running backs that are going to be phenomenal for me now. And then I've got my future, kind of coming in to kind of take their place eventually.
Man, if Bob only had Bijan too. Only.
Too bad this guy.
Yeah, I was one of those guys that sent you a message, Goody, about the Dean pick. I loved it. He was on my list. I was the same way as you. I was like, where does he go? What's a good round to pick him? I was thinking the same thing. I was kind of eyeing him. I was trying to figure out where do I take him. And as soon as you took him, I was like, damn it, I knew I should have taken him a round or two earlier. So, I mean, I thought that was a great pick. I definitely had my eye on him, and I was trying to think through where to take him. But I was – when you took him, I thought that was a great pick in the 20th round there. It was just great. And then, Tommy, real quick, get your thoughts on the 11th through the 15th. You got a steal with Alvin Kamara in the 15th.
Well, in the 11th through 15th round, I was able to snag both my running back 4 and 5 and my wide receiver 4 and 5 and get another Devy pick there. With my 11th round pick, I took Cam Akers. He had a very, very solid end of the season last year. If he can continue that at all as my running back 4, drafted running back 4, there's just a ton of value there. And then in the next couple rounds, I was able to take took Rashad Bateman at the end of the 12th round as my wide receiver 4. Again, solid value there. He could slot in as a wide receiver 3 on a bye week injury fill in, whatever, or a flex position. Kind of the same way with Cam Akers. And then in the 13th round, I went with a Devy pick. I took a freshman quarterback, Malachi Nelson, out of Southern Cal. He's the heir apparent to Caleb Williams. And then in the 14th, the 15th round, I went Mike Evans and Alvin Kamara. Both those guys, wide receiver 5 for me, running back number 5 for me. I still have not taken a Devy yet through 15 rounds, but those are definitely coming. I just saw plenty of value still left in Devy that I was like, if these offensive players are going to fall that far, I'm going to go and take them.
Well, you said you hadn't taken a Devy yet, but then you just said you took a Devy at
No, I'm not.
Malachi
IDP.
Nelson.
IDP, sorry.
IDP, gotcha.
IDP is what I meant.
Yeah. IDPs kind of went a little higher than some than I expected. So just like with my quarterback situation early in the draft, I just kind of played the waiting game. But there were some later round guys that I knew I'd probably be able to get that were going to be highly productive.
Yeah.
So
I took my second Devy there in the 13th round. But I had not taken an IDP yet. I'd been waiting on those just because I knew that there was a ton of value left. I wasn't going to stress it. And as long as there was enough offensive talent available, I was going to continue to go offense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, jumping towards the 16th to 20th rounds, we get in here. We started seeing a lot more IDP guys go. You still saw some offensive guys fall, and then obviously the Devy picks. For me, this is where I started taking a little bit of a reach. I started going out on a limb a bit here in the 16th to the 20th round. I took Shaq Leonard with my 16th pick at 16-3. Now, obviously, injured pretty much all last year, played like a game and a half, 2 games. But if he gets back to 2020, 2021 levels, I mean, that's an absolute steal in the 16th round. So I'm willing to take the upside and hope he bounces back from multiple injuries this past season. So I love Shaq Leonard. I mean, just a few seasons ago, he was, top 5 scorer overall. He was fantastic. And then we talk about playing the long game with the Devys. always tough because you never know if a guy's going to hit. But in the 17th round, I took incoming freshman for Texas, running back Cedric Baxter. He's a guy I'm really high on in this class as far as incoming freshman. He just feels like there's a spot with Roshan Johnson gone, with Bijan gone, and with the QB play and Worthy, it just feels like Texas is up on the upswing. I just feel like if Baxter can get in there as a freshman and hit, he's got huge upside. He's going to be really hard to get in any kind of Devy league next year if he hits as a freshman. So a little bit of a risk reward there because you never know when a guy's never played a college down. Also in a league like this, you're not going to see him for at least 3 seasons on your roster. I kind of went a little bit out on that one, but after seeing Sanders and a bunch of the Singleton, all those other guys go, I just felt like I like the potential of Cedric Baxter, so I jumped in and I took Baxter in the 17th round. I finally jumped on the defensive DB side. Shocker. I took Minka Fitzpatrick in the 18th round. He's just a playmaker, guys all over the place. I needed a DB. At that point, he was one of the highest guys for me. Sneaky pick in the 19th. I know people aren't talking about him because he didn't have a huge year last year, but Alec Pierce for the Colts, I feel like especially with Paris Campbell gone, if they can get better QB play, I think he could be a solid wide receiver too. So I jumped on him in the 19th round. And then right before we just talked about it with Goody with that Nakobe Dean pick in the 20th round, I jumped in and took Rashad Penny at 20.3. One of my favorite guys from San Diego State. Obviously, the injury history is a problem. At that point, I hadn't even taken I'd only taken 2 running backs. And so I had taken Najee Harris and Sean Tucker. So I was like, I need to get on here somewhere. I don't know what I'm going to get out of Penny, but I felt like with the running being on Philly, I was like, he's got to have a huge upside. So I jumped in there and I took Penny. Kind of wish I took Dean in that spot instead, but I was needing a running back. So I jumped in and took Penny, and I'm hoping I get some decent games out of him going forward. Bob, kind of tell me like a little bit, like you took a great Devy pick, a guy I'm high on, and Shadur Sanders, Colorado quarterback. He's a guy I'm super excited about coming forward. I saw you get him in this round, and I was like, man, Bob does it again. Gets another great guy I was thinking about.
Yeah, I think I remember I was actually at I was taking my daughter bowling, and I was standing in line for like 30 minutes just to get tickets. And my pick came up and I was like, oh my gosh, is Shadur Sanders still available? Are you kidding me? So, oh man, I jumped all over that and grabbed him right up. So I was really, really loving my Devy picks at this point. I think I had, in this league, we allowed 4 of them unless someone volunteered to trade one of their Devy picks, then you could have a 5th or 6th. But everyone had 4. So I was really, really, really excited about taking Xavier Worthy, Raheem Sanders, Nick Singleton, and now Shadur Sanders. I was really, really excited about that. A little later on with the 17th, in my 17th round pick, I grabbed an under the radar player that I'd been targeting for a while in Green Bay cornerback, Keyshawn Nixon. Last year, if you count return, he's a returner. So if you count return yards and everything, he finished in the top 5 at defensive back. So having him sitting there, they re-signed him. He's going to be the returner again this year in this scoring system. He has value. So I took full advantage of that. I think he may have even been my first defensive back taken. So he was someone after I lost out on Petrie and lost out on Marcus Jones. He was another guy that I had been targeting even before the draft started. So I just didn't want to lose out on him. So I went ahead and grabbed him up immediately there. So yeah, I was really, really happy with my pick of Shadur Sanders, but I was really happy with that pick of Keyshawn Nixon as well.
Tommy, how about you? You finally jumped in and started really going IDP heavy after not going much IDP earlier in the draft. This is kind of where you kind of started making your ways with the IDP players.
I did. With the early fixation of the IDP and Devy players going, I knew I had time, so I went with offensive players all the way through round 15. Round 16, I started off with Patrick Queen, Then 17, I went Hassan Reddick, who has dual eligibility, so I can throw him in there on my defensive line. Throughout the rest of the draft, I actually really went defensive heavy. I went Matthew Stafford in the 18th round as my QB3. Then I really started in Gregory Rousseau, defensive lineman out of Buffalo, Javon Holland, Matt Milano, Bradley Chubb, Buda Baker, Josh Uche, Jamal Adams. I just felt like there was so much available talent on the defensive side that I could wait this long. Also to backtrack, rounds 11 with the Geno Smith and the Jordan Love picks. Those were phenomenal picks in the 11th round. I think those could be massive, big-time values there. Also, going back to your Cedric Baxter pick, that was extremely solid there. As I mentioned in the Devy show a few days ago, I have a list of 8 or 9 running backs who were in that elite tier. He's one of them. And come 2026, whenever he's available to be able to draft, I highly anticipate he'll be the RB1.
Tommy, what the hell is going on with your cat?
He is just all over the place right now. He's nudging me. He's nudging my table.
Does he have a comment? Does he have a take on this? What is going on? He's like, hey, listen, I got something to say here.
No, he just knows I'm down here, so he wants the attention.
Yeah, I got you. That dude has been all over you for the last several rounds.
Yeah, he's my good dude, though.
Hey, Goody, we talked a little bit about Kobe Dean, kind of your steal, I think, in the 20th round. Kind of talked about some other guys. I mean, you got Josh Allen.
Oh, there you went.
Yep. Lost him. Lost him. It was about time.
So while
we were waiting on it. Let's see him come back.
While you're waiting, be sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Also, the notification bell, if you want to know when we go live, click that. Another thing, go to dynastyprosfootball.com. Check out all our content.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of Devy and IDP, we have Devy rankings, IDP rankings. We have Devy trade values, IDP trade values. Everything combines with Dynasty. So if someone wants to offer you, let's say, Arch Manning and TJ Watt for, let's say, Jonathan Taylor, you can bundle it all up and see if it's a good deal or not. And now we've got JT back. How are you doing, sir?
You knew it was going to happen. You knew I was going to cut out.
We were waiting. We just couldn't wait for it. We couldn't wait.
We had the spiel all ready for it. So
yeah, I know you guys killed it. Thanks so much. But yeah, I was going to say, Goody, talk about your here. You know, we talked a little bit about the Dean pick, great pick at 20, and then you got Josh Allen at 19 with that dual eligibility DN linebacker. Kind of tell me about your picks here, the 16th through 20th round.
Yeah, I mean, so trying to just build up the depth, because at this point I'm pretty happy with everybody I've got starting. Was able to grab Zach Evans as a deeper running back to kind of, as Bob said, stash on that taxi squad for a little bit. That way I can keep things moving. Also excited to get Josh Allen, to be honest, not the quarterback, but the defensive lineman, because he does a lot of things, for a D-line eligible. He's getting me tackles. He's getting me sacks. He's getting forced fumbles. In our IDP settings, we are rewarding all those things. And I'm trying to get guys that are going to go ahead and kind of check off all those boxes, because honestly, the upside's there. He's hitting that age bracket. I feel like defensive linemen, year one and year two, like they're still kind of figuring out. Most teams don't give them a huge snap share, so they're kind of in that 30 to 50% snap share kind of deal. And then they slowly become these guys. If they're really going to be a stud, years 4, 5, and 6 is when you see them up in that 75% snap share. And I think Josh Allen is ready to take that jump, and I was happy to add him in there to go along with some of those linebackers that I already have, and Jaquan Brisker. So the IDP picks were definitely falling into places I had hoped they would.
Yeah, and to kind of stick with that, when we went to rounds 21 through 30, you had a couple of my favorite picks in those rounds. You got Drew Sanders, linebacker out of Arkansas. I think he could be a menace depending on what team he goes to. I really love that pick. You got him in the 25th round. He's somebody I wish I would have jumped on earlier. As soon as you took him, I was like, oh, I should have been thinking about him a couple rounds earlier. And then one of my other favorite picks for you, you got a Devy selection of running back Trey Benson from Florida State. He's a guy I'm super high on. Me and Tommy just did our RB Devy rankings. I think Benson's a top 5 guy for next season. I really like him. High end running back for him. I think he could be a guy that rises a lot this year. Tell me about kind of getting those guys. As like I said, I was pretty jealous that you got in them at this point in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, so, just like, everybody, trying to build that depth with the next couple of years, I grabbed Zach Evans, who's a rookie going to be this year, and I wanted another guy that I could depend on to pair up with some of the running backs that I had, which was Ramondre Stevenson. Really didn't get to talk about DeAndre Swift. I feel like I have a lot of upside guys, but not like a lot of tried and true guys. So was really trying to focus on having a lot of depth with the younger guys later in the rounds. Drew Sanders, one of the few times I made a trade with good Mr. Bob. And I remember asking him for the pick, and he literally, trade faux pas, was like, who are you going to take? And I said, no, I will not disclose that information. And when we came to an agreement, because Bob said he's always open for a deal, I took Drew Sanders, and he literally was like, gosh darn it. And, in that typical, Tennessee twang, he was like, that's definitely somebody. And I just was like, I player comps are so weird for me because, sometimes you see like one little thing and everyone just like jumps over that one detail. And I was watching Drew Sanders, and I'm not 100% sold that he's just a linebacker. I see him moving around. I see him like a Hassan Reddick with the Eagles, where he can put his, hand on the ground and he can get after the quarterback. I could also see dropping back in there. I do not want to use the words Micah Parsons because that is just not right. But I do see Drew Sanders having such positional versatility, like flying around the field. Dude, he went to Alabama, couldn't get on the field, or at least not the way he wanted to. And they were like, okay, bye-bye. And usually after that, you don't ever hear of anybody like that. And then all of a sudden he goes to Arkansas, and then you just watch every game tape, and he is just finding holes, diagnosing plays, shooting the gaps, and he's just like making plays all over the place. And I was like, yes, please. I would love to have this guy on my team. I don't know where he's going. I don't know how he's going to get used. But again, just like the defensive lineman, where it may take a few years, I already had some good guys I liked on the defensive line. So I'm like, Drew Sanders is my guy. So he's probably singularly maybe one of my favorite picks of the entire draft for myself.
Yeah, with Sanders there, whenever he entered the transfer portal last year, I was hoping and praying he was going to go to UT, but he ended up going to Arkansas, and that was a heck of a pickup for them.
I just listened to a rookie draft, ADP draft the other day, and someone actually jumped in and took Sanders number 1 in an IDP rookie draft over Will Anderson. And so that value for you, I mean, it's just gigantic. There's a couple people out there that think he's going to be an absolute terror on the field. So I just, when I saw him go in the 25th and you took him, I was kicking myself for not thinking about him earlier. I just thought that was crazy. Tommy, talk about some of the value and stuff you thought about too. Oh, Bob, yeah, Bob, you trade the pick. That hurts when you trade that pick and then
I was actually going to take Drew Sanders with that pick. And I called Tommy. I think I called Tommy, and I was pissed. I was kicking myself over that. I was like, I'll make a trade. I'll pick up, I'll move up in a couple of rounds. I'll drop back a few picks here, and I'm going to take Drew Sanders then. And I mean, I don't care to ask someone, hey, if you're wanting to make this pick, who are we targeting? And, dang nabbit, as we say in the South. I mean, goody.
Well, I remember that conversation, and dang nabbit was not the words you used.
No, it was not.
Neither was gosh darn it.
No.
And I remember saying to him, how the hell are you going to get sniped in the 25th round? But he did somehow, and that was a great pick.
Well, I'll tell you, if he would have told me he was targeting Drew Sanders there at that pick, I wouldn't have made it. That was my target. I just thought literally I could move back a handful of spots. I'll take him then, because this was the time of the draft where I was looking at rookie defensive players. I mean, Will Anderson Jr. had gone quite a bit earlier in the draft, and so the upside there is pretty good with him, even though I think he's more of just kind of a pass rushing specialist. I don't know if he's a 3-down type of edge. But the Drew
Go back
Sanders,
and watch some of his film, because he had a couple of really nice picks this past season.
No, he did. And Tommy, you know a hell of a lot more about that stuff than I do. So, I take your word. I trust your word all day with that. But yeah, that was another one later on. I called Tommy up and I was like, damn it, dude. Luckily he didn't tell me. I mean, that's good for Goody that he didn't tell me. Like, oh, nope. Not going to tell you who I'm taking. I'm like, all right. So I took a shot, took a chance, tried to, gain a little bit of advantage, and it backfired. I mean, it was one of the first ones that really backfired on me. So that was a hell of a pickup for him. Hell of a pickup.
Yep. I mean, I have the whole chat right here. And yeah, it definitely wasn't gosh darn it and, sugar, honey, iced tea. Those were not the words that come out of Bob's mouth.
Did I curse you?
You curse everybody, so yeah, I'm sure you did.
I'm not really sure what kind of mature audience rating.
I think I might have dropped as soon as he'd made the pick. I think I sent him a dirty message in the chat, something there, like yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, when I made that pick and I was going through guys like doing a lot more IDP stuff, and I was just going through it, and I kept watching these videos of him, and I'm just like, holy smokes, like he just blows through lines. And like, yes. I don't like to get sucked in because, no offense to Arkansas, but when you're playing, Stephen F. Austin, the tape can look really, really good. And you realize that guy's never going to see an NFL film. And yeah, he blew right by that offensive lineman, but, and then all of a sudden you look and it's like Ole Miss. And it's like a left tackle who will definitely play on Sunday. And he just bull rushed him, got him out of the way. Or, you see him diagnose a play. And I just was like, I literally, after I made that pick and I looked at it, I said, I saw the tape on him and I said, I had to draw a line in the sand and say, I have to have him on my team.
He wreaks havoc. He wreaks havoc. He was a guy that I was targeting. So
if you look at it, there's a reason why he couldn't get on the field at Alabama, and the guy's name was Will Anderson. That was the only reason why he couldn't get on the field. So him transferring away and being able to show what he can do, which was unreal. He actually led the nation in sacks for a while there during the first half of the season. He played much better than Will Anderson did for a lot of the year, I thought. And I mean, if the only reason he couldn't get on the field was Will Anderson, that's a pretty damn good reason.
Yep.
Yeah, Tommy, tell me about kind of what you thought in this area. A ton of tight ends, like great value for tight ends, which kind of made me think about my Goddard pick in the 5th round, but ton of value. I got McBride in the 25th, but there was a ton of guys that went in this range.
Yeah, I mean, you had Cole Kmet there in the 22nd, Dalton Kincaid in the 24th. Trey McBride in the 25th. Then you went Mike Gesicki and Noah Fant there in the 26th round. That is just insane tight end value pretty late in the draft at that point. You're talking about guys who are probably going to be your tight end 2 who could actually be your tight end 1 at some point. So I was really impressed with the tight end value there. As far as my draft in those rounds, I really continued to build my defense, and I also went with my last 2 Devy picks. I went really freshman heavy with my Devys outside of Caleb Williams. Obviously, Caleb Williams was my first one. My second one was a freshman, Malachi Nelson. And then my 3rd and 4th picks, I took Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback out of Tennessee, and then I took Mekhi Lemon, the wide receiver out of Southern Cal. So I actually took 3 Southern Cal guys as my Devys as well.
I was going to say, Bob, that's when you started really kind of hitting the rookie IDP guys in the upcoming draft. Tell me about some of the guys you grabbed there in the rounds 21
Yeah,
through
I absolutely.
21 through 30.
I loved my pickups in these in in the 20s. I started off at the 20, in the 21st round by taking Dante Foreman. Don't know what to expect there, but there is absolutely upside there. He could be the starting running back for Chicago, and to grab someone that could be a starting running back in a good offense and in the 21st round, insane. He may not. I mean, they may draft someone. He may be, kind of the 1B, but regardless, this following season here, he's going to be useful. You're going to be able to use him, especially if bye weeks and injuries and whatnot seems to always happen with running backs. Some other guys that I really, really liked grabbing in the 20s here, some guys that had a couple of years. I grabbed, earlier on, I grabbed Chris Jones out of Kansas City. I was able to get my hands on Daniil Hunter. I mean, this guy, is coming off of an injury, but he is a high-end edge rusher. So grabbing him here was low risk. They're tremendous upside there. I was able to get my hands on Bobby Wagner, I believe in the 26th round. I mean, he was unsigned at that point, but he was going to make an impact wherever he was. The guy's probably still has a couple of solid productive years in IDP leagues. He was a top tier. I mean, he was a very, very productive IDP last year in Los Angeles. So the fact that he ended up back in Seattle with, Jordan Brooks being hurt and don't know when he's going to be back, absolute steal. But you did touch on some of I started really looking at that's, after the Drew Sanders pickup there, I started really, taking into account, like, no one's taking these rookie defensive players yet. None of them are really going. So I think back-to-back in the 22nd and 23rd round at 22-12 and 23-01, I took my first two IDP rookies in Tyree Wilson and Miles Murphy. Took them back-to-back. Extreme, value there for me. A few picks later at the 23-03, I took Jalen Carter. Absolutely loved these picks within just a few picks of one another. I'll stick them on my taxi squad, and I'll just reap the benefits a little later on, see how they develop. At this point, we're in the 20-something round. I mean, going into the 30th round, this is just, we're grabbing guys with high upside here. And to grab Tyree Wilson, Miles Murphy, getting Jalen Carter, I was really happy with getting Daniil Hunter and Bobby Wagner and, mixed in there. Very, very happy with the results there and between the 20th and 30th round.
Yeah, for me, jumping in there, that's where I started getting hot IDP heavy, trying to make sure I filled out my lineup. I did take in the 21st round Malik Neighbors, a guy that I think, Tommy, we're going to talk about coming up on our wide receiver Devy. He's a guy, wide receiver at LSU, I think has monster upside, could be the next big thing out of LSU at wide receiver. I just, at that point, I felt like I had to grab another Devy, and he was a guy sitting out there that I think has top 3 upside in his draft class. So I grabbed him in the 21st, and then I just started and I got Trey McBride in the 25th, which I was really happy about as my second tight end. So I was good there. But then I just started hammering IDP in those rounds. I took Pete Werner, who I think has star potential out of New Orleans in the 22nd. Jumped in with Cody Barton, moving from Seattle to Washington, and Washington loses Holcomb. I think that gives Barton a chance to get a ton of tackles. So I jumped on him on the 26th. C.J. Mosley and Jordan Poyer were my two vets I took in these rounds. I think those guys got a couple stud years left in them, hopefully 1-2 stud years left. So I grabbed both of them in there as well as Xavier McKinney. He missed a lot of time last year, but his guy's got a huge upside for the Giants. I've got him on a couple other IDP teams, so I kind of threw him in there in the mix. I just kind of felt like, I was like, yeah, this guy's got some good upside. I like that. And then once I saw you jump, Bob, I saw you start taking the rookie defensive guys. I had to get in the mix, and I took Van Ness out of Iowa the sophomore, sky's the limit on him. Didn't get a ton of playing time at Iowa just because they were so deep there, but I think he's got huge upside. So I jumped in and I took him in the 31st round. And that was my big play there. As soon as I saw that guy, I was like, I like him as a backup defensive end for me. And if he can explode, I was like, I love that fact. Jumping forward now.
Now I'll tell you, you know what? There was another pick in there. I forgot to mention. We mentioned earlier in the show Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee, the wide receiver out of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. That was a guy that had a great pro day and is a very underrated wide receiver in this draft. Mainly, I think because Jalen Hyatt got a lot of those touchdowns there in that offense. But
also because Tillman was hurt for most of the season.
Yeah. Tommy knows all about this guy, but I grabbed him there in the 27th round. So another young guy I can stick on my taxi squad and see what happens, how he develops. So.
Yeah, there was all kinds of rookies kind of going these rounds. You got him. I got Izzy, the running back out of Pittsburgh. At this point, I realized I had no running backs. I better start piling up guys. So I jumped in and kind of took him to kind of figure out. I was like, I got to take some shots on some guys. And then again, we talked about late tight end value in these last rounds, but then we jumped into the 31st through the 41st round, which was our last 10 rounds. There was some really good value there. In the 33rd round, Zach Kuntz, Jelani Woods, Sam Laporta, Hayden Hurst, and Tyler Higbee all went in the 33rd round. It's just I was looking at that and I was like, wow, man, I was upset I missed out on a few of those guys, but they looked really, really good. Kind of give me some of you guys' thoughts on kind of these last couple rounds, the dart throws, jumping in and trying to get somebody that you hope hits.
Well, I was really stoked with getting Kuntz there in the beginning of the 33rd round. Jonathan Walker actually took Zach Ertz at the end of the 31st, and Ertz still has plenty of value left. I mean, he's not done. Even if he's not with the Cardinals after this upcoming year, he's still gonna be somewhere, I think, and still has plenty left in the tank. As long as he can stay healthy, he's eventually gonna cede his starting spot to McBride. But once he's out of Arizona and somewhere else, he still has plenty of value, in my opinion. And then with Hayden Hurst there in the 33rd, Higbee in the 33rd. Gerald Everett there, it looks like in the 38th round. There's still a lot of value left for some of these guys, especially whenever some people are, kind of, in my opinion, kind of wasting picks with, guys like Malik Willis, Marcus Mariota. I know Goody took Mariota there. I assume that's because it's a Philly pick, but there was still a lot of other value. Matter of fact, he made better picks after the Marcus Mariota pick, in my opinion.
Well, can you talk about that, because you took him to back up Hurts because you have Hurts. I was on the other side of it. I missed out on Mike White. I just thought nobody was going to take him. I was going to take him to back up Tua in case we had injury concerns with Tua. And then I ended up getting snaked. I ended up making a trade later because there wasn't anybody I loved. And somebody, jumped up, asked me, hey, you willing to trade this pick? I'm like, sure, man, I'll move back a little bit and then move up later. And then the pick I traded ended up being Mike White. And I was like, oh, no. I'm like, I need Mike White just because of Tua's injury history. So I understand you wanting to get the backup in Mariota. So kind of tell me about Mariota and your picks here in the last 10 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it was. This team was predicated on the Eagles with A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. And if Jalen Hurts went down, I would be foolish not to have his backup because of that team that I have set up. So I had to go grab him. Again, we talked about Nakobe Dean, and you have to wait out the Drew Sanders. When do I pull the plug? And I just looked at it, and you're right. When I saw Mike White and that tier of quarterbacks going, I'm like, all right, so this is where teams are going to be looking to grab somebody that's going to have a shot. And, I always say to myself, what would Bob Miller do? Would he sit there and draft a Marcus Mariota in like round 33 and then just slide into my DMs and go, hey, Joe, by the way, were you by chance hoping to get Marcus Mariota? Because I would love to get my hands on Drew Sanders. And then he'd have me over a barrel and I'd be like, well, so you're right when I may have pulled, his plug a little bit and I got some, IDP depth after him. One of the guys in that group that I'm super excited about is Darrell Taylor. He had a sack in 5 out of the last 6 games last year. And he's one of those guys that, again, hitting at the 2nd, 3rd year, 4th year guys on the defensive line, when they can get after the quarterback, they're going to start getting on the field more, the snap share. So, Seattle is sneakily putting together a really good defense. And, if I can get a piece that late in the draft with a guy that's going to just be on the field to go after the quarterback, why not have that depth? And that's sort of what I did is I grabbed him in round 39. So, super excited about that. And even in the DBs with Derek Forrest, who's getting a lot of playing time for Washington. And one guy that, I'm definitely projecting a little bit, but the very last pick of my draft was Kohu from Miami. I just feel like he just, again, with that snap share, just was seeing more and more as the season went on. And I'm just projecting him to really have a breakout. And with IDP, that's sort of almost where you have to be with IDP. Start to look at where those free agents move, find the guys who are going to step up. Do they have talent now? Okay, now the opportunity and talent are going to intersect. Those are the guys you grab that year before they hit. And then you've got gold. So super excited for those last 4 or 5 rounds.
I wasn't meaning to crap on your Mariota pick. It was nice to hear your inside thought on that. I wasn't meaning to just totally take a dump on that pick there. But I was just basically pointing out that there were you made better picks after that pick was kind of my thought.
Oh, I don't take offense to it. Listen, we have all done enough drafts and we've already, spent an hour and a half talking about it where we've had if only I had, that is like the bar none. That's what drafting is. And with this, because you've got this year's team, you have IDP guys, you've got your Devy picks, you're trying to all find the balance. And there is no one place to go to get all of these different types of scenarios to go, what's the ADP for my 3rd Devy pick? And it doesn't exist. So right. We're all kind of feeling things out and we all make mistakes. Like, so I said, before we even got started, I'm not necessarily a big draft guy. I'm weeks 1, 2, and 3, because all of a sudden, as all the movement starts to happen, I love to grab guys who get drafted and people drop them going, oh, they're not going to play now, so I'm going to drop them now, and then scoop them up and wait them out a little bit. Because to me, that's where you win championships, is being diligent, finding those guys on the waiver wire. Draft is great, but, we love Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman is a stud until he gets drafted by Seattle. And he's now wide receiver 5, and he's not getting on the field. And then all of a sudden, he has all the ability, but that opportunity, that intersection isn't there for this year. Whereas somebody else, like I took Puka later in the draft, all of a sudden, let's say Puka hits on the Buffalo Bills, and you're like, well, maybe he could flash in the summer and all of a sudden be a guy. And it really just depends on that opportunity. So, saying all that, there's a bunch of dudes in those last couple rounds where you're like you'd said, Tommy, that was probably a better pick than the pick in the 20th round. But that's only because everybody's trying to weigh all the different stuff. And,
right.
Next thing you know, just I'm looking at Raheem Jarrett in the 40th round. That dude last year is a Devy pick, and Tommy knows all about this, but, Raheem Jarrett was on as high of a list of wide receivers as you could probably find, because the dude has an immense talent. This year didn't quite work out the way I think, that went, but dude, 40th round with Raheem Jarrett, which is just crazy talent and crazy value.
Yeah, you're grabbing guys here right now with upside.
Just dart throws, really.
Yeah, I look at it more of in a way of trying to protect my investment with my team. If it is grabbing a handcuff, like with your Mariota pick, that's protecting your investment.
Yeah, which is why it was nice to hear the kind of the inside thought of what you were doing there, because I had forgotten you had taken Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and that's what it is. Taking a look at the draft here, that's kind of what I did a little later on. I took Kwity Paye in the 28th round. I mean, a young up and coming defensive end. With this being return yards being a part of this, I grabbed Devin Duvernay later on. I mean, he could be a nice little bye-week flex play. I grabbed people like Denzel Perryman at linebacker. When he's on the field, he's highly productive. I grabbed, Curtis Samuel, someone like that to me is used. He's kind of like a poor man's Deebo Samuel. He's somewhat useful. He can be useful on your fantasy team. A couple of the picks that really stuck out to me towards the end of the draft, I think in the 37th round, I took a shot at taking Stetson Bennett. This is a super flex draft, and Stetson Bennett was a pretty darn good, very well-tested quarterback in college football, winning national championships with Georgia. And seeing people, these quarterbacks, Brock Purdy and Davis Mills and all of these guys getting shots at playing quarterback. I mean, why not take a chance, 3 or 4 rounds from this thing ending with someone like Stetson Bennett? This guy could end up being a starting quarterback by mid-season. It may not be the most ideal situation, but he's just one injury away from jumping in there and showing what he can do. Another guy, I ended up making a trade towards the end of the draft. I think one of the next to last rounds with someone and actually picking up an extra Devy pick, even though I already had made 4. This person was like, I have no idea who to take. Yeah, we can make a deal. So I picked up his Devy, and I went and I grabbed my guy Kyle McCord out of Ohio State. Looks like he could be the starting quarterback going into this year. He looks like he has the leg up. On I think what is it, Devin Brown, I believe. So
a finger up, really.
yeah. So Kyle McCord can be he could end up being a first-round quarterback next year's draft if things go well. He's certainly got the wide receivers to make himself look great, and so he could put up kind of Dwayne Haskins types of numbers here this season. So like I said, right at the end of the draft, you're grabbing a quarterback that could be a top 4, top 5 quarterback in next year's draft. Low risk, but high reward there.
Well, that was kind of the thing with Kyle McCord going into last season, was that him and CJ Stroud were competing against each other. And Kyle McCord came really, really close to winning that job, but CJ Stroud obviously won out at the end. And obviously, we see where CJ Stroud is.
Yeah, and there's no reason to think that Kyle McCord may not put up similar type of numbers. Look at the receiving options he has there in Ohio State. They just keep producing stud wide receivers. So whoever's there is going to make this guy, his confidence going to be through the roof. He's going to play very, very well, and I think he could be a kind of a high end quarterback in next year's draft.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting ready. I'm doing that Devy U article on Ohio State, and I had went through and it's funny with Kyle McCord, the dude can flat out play, and so can Devin Brown. To be honest, I think both of them could very well end up being NFL quarterbacks, and the talent is just all over the place on that team. You got Travion Henderson, who is about to be the next guy too as a running back. And then his backup, Mian, is almost just as good. On the games that Travion wasn't in there, Mian goes in there. He's like, oh, okay, I'll get 4 touchdowns today. No big deal.
Dallin Hayden was solid too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy the amount of talent that comes out of there. And it's kind of like I said, I'm shamelessly plugging that, we're all about Devy here at Dynasty Pros Football. And, we're starting to really analyze these teams going, you got to start looking at these Devy. Look at the teams that are producing these positions and go, I don't care if this guy is 2 years away. If he's from LSU and he's a wide receiver, I think they know what they're doing at LSU with wide receivers. I'm going to have to take a good look. And then you guys talk about Texas is, that another team that's really starting to get into this zone of developing young talent. So, Bob hits it on the head. At the end of the draft, you're looking at some guys trying to free up, take some taxi squad guys. I still think it's hilarious that Stetson Bennett is as old as Lamar Jackson. It just blows my mind to think that they're actually the same age, and yet they're completely different points of their life. Lamar Jackson's trying to get paid $250 million, and Stetson Bennett really just wants to get on a roster at this point. But yet they're the same age, and they've both been highly successful and now they're moving on. So this draft was awesome in every way, shape, or form. Everybody that was in there, Bob said it earlier, sharp. Every time you're thinking, oh, this guy will slip through the cracks, and you realize, dang it, he went that last round. How did he get through there? You get snaked, and you're always just like, gosh, man, I really wanted that guy. So we get to the end of the draft. I mean, it's just amazing that the talent that's still there, and it's going to be a really fun season. And I am excited that I get to open this season against Mr. Bob Miller. So we're going to see how that goes.
Well, you may have the leg up on me because I don't know if Sleeper's going to actually have the IDP rookies on their app by that time. I mean, they are taking their precious time, and it's
at least they're not fan tracks.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, I meant to mention this earlier. Anyone who was looking at those the draft board, they did not have rookie IDP players up in the system, so we had kickers. So if you're looking through there trying to figure out what's going on, we use kickers for rookie IDP players and for Devy picks. So it might be slightly confusing, but that's kind of how that worked out. And we talked about like some of our favorite guys that maybe slipped that we're trying to grab at the end. I grabbed Chad Muma at 37-10. And he's a guy I absolutely love. He just needs an opportunity. He's got a few studs in front of him there in Jacksonville, but he's a guy that I think if he gets on the field, he's going to be an absolute beast. I got him in the 37th round, and believe me, I was looking for a bunch of rounds trying to decide, should I take him or is somebody going to get him in front of me? But I finally jumped on him. I took a bunch of rookies late. Xavier Hutchinson, the wide receiver out of Iowa State, grabbed him. I grabbed Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss, my second to last pick. Both those guys, bigger wide receivers in a smaller-ish wide receiver class. So I kind of grabbed both those guys late, hoping one of them hit. And then I jumped on Eric Gray, the running back out of Oklahoma, hoping he gets a decent spot as I was kind of thin at running back. And then I looked for about 5 rounds, and I kept thinking about it. And eventually I took Leonard Fournette. I'm hoping he ends up somewhere, and he's got a little bit left in the tank because I'm not very deep at running back. But I grabbed him in the 33rd round, and I'm hoping he's just got a little bit something left and he gets a decent landing spot. But that's kind of where I kind of finish things out. We already talked about me getting snaked on Mike White, as I should have jumped on him a little bit earlier than I did. We're about an hour and 50 minutes in. Guys, go ahead and give me your kind of final thoughts, and then we'll close this thing out.
Well, I thought everybody did a pretty solid job. There's a couple teams that look like they're more building towards the future than competing right now. I kind of said earlier that my whole strategy is to kind of have a good mixture of youth and vets, to where I'm just kind of reloading from year to year and not really having to rebuild or play a win now type situation. I can kind of contend all the time. I found that really works for me, especially whenever leagues last a long time. Obviously, if you're only expecting a league to last, for 2, 3, 4, even 4 years, it's always going to be a win now. But in this type of situation where we're looking at hopefully keeping this thing going for years, you want to kind of have that reload strategy and not really look towards building, 4 or 5 years towards the future.
Yep. And looking at the teams, both Tommy and Bob built really, really solid teams up and down the board. And I would have probably a pretty strong inclination that, we get to playoff time, those guys are going to be probably in the top 4 for sure. I'm hoping just to sneak in there, but if I don't, I also know I got a future. So those guys are good to go. And, I got the draft right with you, JT, because you and I were both back and forth, next to each other. And I feel like, you might have missed on a few guys that you said that you didn't like, but I feel like you hit on them, like Chad Muma. I actually think he's going to beat out Devin Lloyd. And that's just my gut. I think he's going to be on the field, and he will be racking up stuff. So you're going to love that pick for sure. And when push comes to shove, this is a really good league. I'm really excited to see how this goes.
Yeah, I mean, just to have, it's Dynasty, it's super flex. You're adding in IDPs, then you're adding Devys. And don't forget, there was Devy IDPs. There was a couple of those actually taken in this draft that wasn't even discussed. But, no stone was left unturned when it comes to this league, which made it super, super fun with all the trades, all the chatter, everything going down there. With my team, I really, really like the mixture of what I did. I am that guy. I am just not afraid to draft an older player because I want to win. And when you're doing a startup, the easiest year to win is year 1. Don't get me wrong. And maybe a year from now, I'm looking to move off of a couple of these older guys and trying to get younger, which I've done in other dynasty leagues over the years. But I really, really love the team that I'm putting out there, especially with some of the incoming younger, IDPs that I've taken. So, give them time to develop. And the same thing with these Devy players. I really, really like that I'm going to get some of these quarterbacks coming into me. I took 2 high upside quarterbacks in the Devy, in my Devy picks. I took 2 very, very high upside running backs and then grabbed, in my opinion, at least a top 5 wide receiver, if not top 3. So I was very, very happy with the mixture of old and young that I grabbed in this draft.
Also, fantasy football is getting harder and harder and harder to win in just because everybody who plays is out there looking for all this content and reading and watching and listening that they know what they're doing. So the best thing to do is also do your own research whenever following these guys. Know where they're going, know coaching changes. If there's any type of scheme switch, you kind of have to know all that stuff to really get a leg up on everybody else.
Yeah, I felt like that this was a great draft. I wanted to kind of do this podcast because I wanted to give people an idea of that are coming up into startups, where some of these guys are falling, where a Devy guy's falling, where an IDP, where are people starting to grab IDP players, where are some of these rookies, if you're in a league that's drafting rookies and startup, kind of where they fall. And I thought this was a really good exercise for people to kind of see where they go, something that they can look back at throughout the summer as their startup drafts start to come up, that they can kind of look through and see what we did here and kind of get an idea of where a guy might fall and do all that. So that's why I was really excited about it. That's why I wanted to have this podcast and us kind of talk about it. I think it's going to be a really fun league. I think it's going to be really interesting. It's definitely going to be competitive. So I'm really excited about it and all that. So for close here, everybody kind of just jump in real quick. We'll go Bob, then Tommy, then Goody. Jump in, tell everybody where they can find you at Twitter, what kind of you got going on, upcoming shows, where to find you on the web, all that good stuff.
All right, I guess I'll stop. I'll start here. Everyone can follow me at Dynasty Bob FF on Twitter. You can find all of our content over at dynastyprosfootball.com. I have an IDP show that comes out every other week. I just did one the other day with Master IDP. My next episode in a couple of weeks, I'm going to have Jorge Edwards from Fantasy and Frames on. Just keep in touch, keep a lookout for us. And check out dynastyprosfootball.com, because if you're into Devy, we have great Devy rankings. We have great Devy trade values. Same thing with IDP. We have trade values there. So it's a great, great tool and a great resource, especially if you're playing in leagues like this.
You can find me at at Dynasty Pros Tom on Twitter. Also keep up with everything on dynastyprosfootball.com. I do a lot of Devy stuff. I put together the Devy rankings and the Devy trade values, as well as if you see any postings of our Devy minutes. I also do that. I put together a Devy U article about Southern Cal last week. Go check that out. We're going to have more of those coming up. As Goody said, we're going to have an Ohio State one, an LSU one, Texas, plenty of other ones, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia. All those are going to be coming out in the future.
Very good articles. Very good stuff there.
Just be sure to check everything out there. If you have any questions or have any thoughts, hit me up on Twitter. Also, we have a Devy show coming out every other Monday. It's me, SC Romero, and JT over here. Our next show is going to be here in a couple weeks. We're going to go over Devy wide receivers. Be sure to check that out.
You can find me at jgoody77 on Twitter. Put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in my last little series on second-year IDP players. I broke down positions, both defensive line, linebackers, DBs. And then I actually did a summary article. I picked my favorites out of each of the position groups, and I called those tsunamis. So we got the second-year surges and then the tsunamis, who are the guys I just really think are going to hit. And currently just wrapping up my Ohio State Devy U article. Like I said, shout out to Tommy. He wrote that USC, and I was just like, gosh, man, I want to get in on that. I want to get some more research and, breaking all this down. That's why it's taking me a little longer. No offense, Tommy, but Ohio State just got so many guys. And the funny thing is, like, I'll just preface this now. We're talking about Marvin Harrison and Emeka. Dude, they just got 2 new kids who are coming in. Same thing, ranked number 7 and number 8.
3 of them,
right? Just bonkers. Just like they're just loading up. So check that out because that'll be out hopefully within the next few days. Wrapping up that article, but I'm also including some IDP guys on that as well because Ohio State, you can focus on the offense, but, you'd be disrespecting the defense a little bit if you didn't include some of those guys. So taking me a little longer, but when it's done, it's going to be a lot of insight on exactly where these guys are coming from. So super excited.
Yeah, you were mentioning you mentioned Ohio State there. You got, you're going to have 3 quarterbacks, you're going to have 3 running backs, you're probably going to have 5, 6, 7 wide receivers, a couple of tight ends who are going to be really, really studs. So I'm looking forward to seeing that and editing it and putting it up on the site.
Yeah, and to close things out here, I'm JT Orange on Twitter. You can find me there. I play a little bit of everything. So any kind of questions you have, redraft, dynasty, Devy, IDP, best ball, I play it all. So any of that stuff, trades, feel free to hit me up on there. Obviously, look for us on Mondays, me and Tommy with SC doing the Devy show every other Monday. So that's a big place where you find me. And then coming up, I've got my new podcast, The Stew with JT Brew, that's going to be hosted on Dynasty Pros. Coming up, I've got guests every week, and we're going to talk about each position and 3 guys from each position, similar ADP, and where do we like them? Who do you like? Who you taking? So that's something that I'm looking forward to. Check us out. We'll be on next Thursday on The Stew with JT Brew for that one. For all the guys here at Dynasty Pros, thanks for coming on. We had a great time. Go ahead, go look back at this, pause it, look at the draft board, see where guys kind of fall, because that's something I love to do when I see this thing, kind of get my idea of when I'm doing a startup draft, where do I see guys falling, where can I wait on a guy, where do I need to maybe go a round or 2 earlier, Sanders, all those guys where I missed out on that I regret. Now I'm going to look at those going, hey, my next startup, I got to get in early on those guys, make sure I don't lose out on them. So thanks to all you guys. Thanks for Bob, Tom, and Goody. Thanks for helping us out, being here with me. Again, I'm JT. Thanks for joining us. Check out everything on Dynasty Pros Football. We'll check you guys later. Have a good one.